It's number two, right? The way they keep kidnap children and women is that they often the child is transported to the other side of the earth to disappear, right? It's clearly that if a child walks around in the same area that it's missing, that's not possible, right? So often the trafficking goes around the globe. That implicates airport staff, uh, custody staff, passport checks up, and often it goes pretty easy, right? Sadly enough, because there is these rings, right? Or the passport is so good made, maybe even made by the officials on wrong false papers or something. And if we talk about staff of military, police, courtship, politicians, media, they have easier access to, you could say, legalized documents, right? Even it's a legal case, right? Then the child gets to a new country. If the child is stubborn and don't want to be there and want to go home, is crying, angry, don't want to eat, is screaming, I want to go home, I want to go home, right? Then often there will be some psychic torture or physical torture and sexual abuse to break the child, right? And after that, it behaves, right? When first broken, you start to behave, unless you are made of stone or iron, right? But anyway, then the child is sometimes, not always, sometimes put into local childcare, local schools, going to sport, looks on the surface, normal. In countries where there's a lot of, you could say, systematically violence, right? Broken voices and stuff like that. A child might even try to say, hey, help me, there's not, there's something doing with something to me in the weekends. There's somebody, this is not my parents, But if it's a system where the voice of a child don't matter, or where the adult, if an adult, nurse, doctor, pedagogue, school teacher, if the voice don't matter because they have no votes, right? Then the child have to, learn that lesson, which is nobody listen, right? In the media, the same. If the child grows up and becomes stronger, maybe remember something, and goes to the media and say, hey, I think I am, from United States, from UK, Australia, and the media is not interesting, right? Because media might not have a voice. They might be scared of police or government or military, or they might be involved in some pedophilia. We have seen some big scandals in BBC, right? And another thing is that often the women, there's also another kind of kidnap, you could say alias thing, is that the person on the run as criminal, right? We often talk about drugs, enterprise, different things, fraud and stuff. They need a new name, right? So a new name is maybe two kids, right? A new name is maybe a changed face, right? So a changed face and some, you could say, black adopted kids or stolen kids. Then the woman is changing her ID for being a fast-moving, smart drug queen to being a mom for two kids. And she will also become maybe a refugee, right? And you also see some cases where a woman is sold as a kind of wife to Denmark, US, UK. You all know the stories about Thai women moving to Europe or African women moving to a Christian man in Europe, right? That is slavery. There's nothing else to say about it. It is, I'm sad to say that. But if you are knowing anything about prostitution, it's very unlikely that you would be cured enough to love anyone, right? Cured enough to have a free choice, especially when you are trapped in a kind of a limbo between the military and the sex custom, right? In Thailand. So actually, I would recommend that if you are a young man or older man and looking for a wife, you have to look at yourself. You have to look why you can't find a woman in the bigger area you live in, right? Is there something about that you have to get in fitness? Do you have to dress a little smarter? Do you have to, maybe go to school again or learn something smart or being a little more open or. But anyway, a lot of the women that is, you could say, sold as sex slave, they might even have a child that's not theirs, right? So there might be children that comes along with a Thai woman or African woman, which is somebody else's child. For example, prostitution, they could not look after a child, or maybe even kidnap child. And some of the prostitution women that are sold in this way knows that the child they are moving to a new country likely will be abused, right? Likely. So actually, this is. I always wonder a little bit about UK and Denmark, and also Germany a little bit. But why is it that you never see adult kissing in the cafes and adult lovers over 18, man, woman, walking down the street in love? Is Denmark and UK gay areas? Is it more incestuous than other places because it's far away from everything? There is not, in the old days, whoa, there comes a ship, let's get late. Actually, I know from places in Jutland, Fanø, that they were very open to any kind of culture because it was new blood, right? So actually, down the west coast here, you can find Spanish blood, you can find Portuguese blood from the sailors, right? So actually, I would recommend you not to be so, racistic, because I'm not saying that people, of course, there's people marry for love, also Danish and Thai women, but be careful when it's from a sex market, right? Because a sex market is a sex market. And even you can fall in love, it's still broken souls. Anyway, still maybe more likely if you went out to some of the more normal places in Thailand. Or the same in Africa. If you went to a big town and dated an African woman with her own business, you might not be so lucky. Anyway, I also think that there's some mentality in Europe, especially by men, that thinks that they have the right to assault women, children, and they kind of master to use them, explore them, abuse them. And I think it's a very, very, in a way, insecure way of being. It's like a insecure army person that has to hit somebody to get a little high. And actually, I also think it's a bit weird that they still have this slave mentality that they think somebody is lower than they are. What is that about? Jesus Christ, man! This is 2016. Psychology was invented. Human rights been there sometime. We travel all over the world. Right? So why don't keep away from children and don't kind of explore abuse women, please?